Hello, beautiful people.
What's
Welcome
up?
to, welcome to this next installment of Coffee Chats. Is my voice like uncharacteristically cavernous, or are we good?
It does sound a little echoey, but it doesn't bother me.
All right, excellent. Cool. So we're gonna proceed as normal. So for this week's installment of Coffee Chats, yay! First of all, happy June. It's officially well, I guess it doesn't really become summer until the end of June, but where I live, it feels like summer.
It's
Doesn't it
hot.
feel, doesn't it feel
It's
like summer all the time where you live, Mackenzie?
I mean, it's definitely really hot right now. So it's summer is here. The
Mm-hmm.
mosquitoes are out for blood, literally.
Oh God, that's my least favorite part of warm weather. Like you want to enjoy it, but so do the bugs apparently. And it's like I did not ask to be disrespected.
Yep.
But I digress. So, in this week's discussion, we're going to be talking more explicitly about how to become a contributing writer. A lot of people in our coffee chat group audience are people who are aspiring to write books, but what does it mean to have more short form content circulated across a variety of different platforms? So, without further ado, we're super excited to introduce our guest for today. And she's actually a very familiar face on the Coffee Chat channel. And we're really excited for her to share her expertise in this regard. So, dun, dun, dun.
Hi,
Hey, Zara! How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
You know, I'm out here doing my best.
I love the honest response. It's my trademark, so definitely sharing the vibes.
So, the first question we have for you, Zara, is
Yes.
how early on in your book journey did you consider becoming a contributing writer? And did you write pieces and work on your book at the same time?
Right. So it's a complicated question because in my case, I mean, it's a complicated answer. The question is really good and well thought out, but I have a complicated answer. In my case, I was a journalist or learning to be one before I became a novelist. So it's an interesting world to navigate, especially when you don't set your heart out to be in a world of a written word initially. I've always wanted to write and always had a deep love for writing, but I grew up in an environment where being a writer is the worst thing that could happen to your life. And I mean, not only is the job famous for not being well paid, but also the type of job that can get you killed. And, I looked up to people like Jay Bahadur and Elsa Kayat. So when it was time to decide, I picked a college major that was as close to communication as possible, while still prestigious enough for my family to be satisfied. But as fate would have it, one of my law professors who became my mentor, Dr. Alice Donald, she was a BBC journalist for 25 years before she started teaching human rights law at Middlesex. So I got intertwined in that world and learned as much as I could about the workings of publishing and journalism and law from her, as well as Philip Leach, who now is a vice chair of the European Implementation Network. So yeah, that's how it kind of started. As for the second part of your question, I started actively pitching, I want to say in 2018. I sent a piece to the London Magazine and The Sun, and I only stopped when I was writing my first book, which is 2 years later. And this is purely subjective, obviously. Some writers can handle splitting their focus and energy. I'm not one of them. I don't like the idea of sacrificing the quality of either projects to put out more content. I'd rather have one piece as close to perfection as possible than having several half-baked articles out there. And spoiler alert, half-baked articles will not get a pass at a decent publication anyway. So I went back to writing articles during the first round of revisions when the hardest part of the job was done and the storytelling became more about fine-tuning. So I guess the answer would be no. as long as I'm writing like the first draft of the manuscript, no, I do not write articles.
I have a follow-up question to this that's kind of like in line with the preliminary question, which is like, I guess it's two parts. Why be a contributing writer? And then one personally for you, why did you decide to be a contributing writer? Why was that important to you? Which you kind of already answered, but then like general advice for why do it.
I would say credibility. It really depends on what kind of a novelist you want to be. If you want to go, obviously, I'm a 90s kid. So when I was growing up, there was only one type of publishing that you could get into, right? It's traditional publishing. So it just adds more credit, or it used to, when I was growing up, when you already had several articles behind your belt and sort of had that credibility established. And it's a different thing when you enter a game with having that sort of thing behind your belt. When you can, I'm going to be very honest, when you can name drop, when you can send a letter of reference along with your acquired letter to the traditional publisher. So that's why I decided, because that used to be the thing that used to be a thing when I was growing up. Now, not anymore. You have options. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
You pretty much answered it. It's why do it in general, but then also do you feel it's important to you specifically and your goals?
Yeah. Honestly, writing a book can be really exhausting. So when you are finally done, at least with the first draft of your manuscript, it's good to get your mind off of it. Basically, writing a book can also stilt your creativity, because you are always on the same topic, going over and over and over the same thing in your head day in, day out.
I feel that.
Yeah. So I honestly, like I said, I do not recommend splitting your energy when you're drafting, when you're writing the first draft. But when that's done, that's the hardest part of the job. So I would say that's why it helps to boost your creativity.
So another aspect of, well, you kind of like naturally started to lean into this a bit, but another aspect of the contributing writing process that Mackenzie and I are curious about is, so it's one thing to have an article to pitch, but it's another thing trying to figure out where the heck you're actually pitching these articles. So how did you brainstorm which platforms to submit to or work with?
Well, again, kind of a unique answer to this one. I brainstormed with the people that have the most experience about anatomy of a pitch. And I guess that would be my general advice for writers out there. Don't be cocky. Don't go out there thinking that just because information in digital eras is only one click away, that the information is accurate. It's shallow and superficial at best. You always get only half the story with internet research. And the most effective way to get ahead is to talk to people. Befriend them and make them feel like you are worth investing their knowledge and time in. Personally, I don't like to waste my time. And if I know that a certain publication does not like to publish works by minorities, then I'm not going to spend 2 weeks writing an article that will never get picked up. But you can access that kind of information only by word of mouth when you have industry knowledge and inside practices. So to be more helpful to writers, I would say Freedom with Writing is a good website to start with. Search for pitches. Duotrope is a good one. Writers Victoria and International Federation of Journalists also comes to mind as well. And start there. It's those are good resources if you haven't encountered a person yet who would be willing to become your mentor and teach you.
Could you repeat those 4 one more time?
Of course. So the first is freedom with writing. The second one is duotrope, Duotrope. The third one was Writers Victoria. And the fourth one was IFJ, International Federation of Journalists.
I may or may not be automatic, like immediately after a call, looking up all four of those. Thank you.
Do you find HARO, Help a Reporter Out, to be helpful for writers as well?
Depends on what kind of writing you're doing. HARO has been designed more to protect the sources and the journalists rather than start your writing career, I would say. It's definitely a good resource, but I wouldn't say that it's a website for pitching. It's more a website for getting as much justice as you can in this world, turning to press. But yeah, in that regard, it is for sure.
Cool. I mean, it's interesting because you might have already started to answer this question, but do you recommend searching for platforms that align with your messaging or honing your messaging to align with the platform?
I would say it's always good to stretch your writing muscle. I don't like to write about one thing over and over again. So when the inspiration strikes and I want to write about a carnivore diet, I make sure to pitch to Mind Body Green, let's say. So that's the approach I take. Obviously, it's hard to establish a relationship with editors. So once I do have a relationship with certain publication, it's always good if they're more generally oriented, so that I don't have to write a perfect pitch again. I can just send an email to Liz and be like, can I write this for you, please? And without getting into the thick of it, like who I am, why I want to do this. So obviously it's easier to write for one publication than it's to always find new ones. But sometimes, at least that's how it is with me, I have this just like burning desire to talk about something. And that something might not always align with the publications that I already established relationships with. So if it's worth it, I do it all over again. The research, the editors, the everything.
So I have a quick follow-up to that. So believe it or not, there was a time in my life when like journalism was a big part of how I saw myself as a writer, and I worked in the opinion section, so it was a little bit different. But the point of my question is a lot, like you alluded to, like the notion of like beats in journalism, like the idea that there are people who specialize in particular topics, and I guess like particularly within the context of authors, like leaning into their branding or their thought leadership, is it better to try to focus on establishing credibility in an area of expertise, or to just get your voice out there about a variety of topics that matter to you?
It depends on the stage of your career that you're currently in. If you are at the beginning of your writing career, it's definitely better to get out there as many stories as you can. But the thing is, the idea or the myth that certified publications only publish writers who are, I don't know, big names or just, have established themselves before, it's surely just a myth. What they are looking for is an expert. So you always want to approach any publication that you want to write for with a certain amount of information, with basically your resume that pertains to particularly what they're interested in. You see those segments even on TV. They don't always feature famous people, but they always feature experts. This doctor and that lawyer and stuff like that, right? So it really depends on the stage at which you're the stage of your career, I would say.
And my mom always told me that I should get my PhD just so that I can write articles. But she's like, people will turn to you as an expert if you get your PhD. And honestly, some of them don't even care what the PhD is in. They just want to like,
no, yeah. Listen, like I agree with you, but I also understand where your mom is coming from, because certainly it used to be a thing before internet became a thing. That used to be a thing. PhD, the doctors were the experts, right? But now it has changed so much that a PhD actually can be detrimental, I would say. Some people would say that you are overqualified to do a certain job because you have a PhD.
Or it might turn people away because they feel like something that's written is about to be above their reading level or too exclusive to access.
Yeah, exactly. I would say so. And from a media standpoint, they do feature experts, but their expertise is judged more based on their actual life experience rather than their college degrees. Because media is all about relatability and sensationalism. And people who are well read and well educated, they often speak in a way that a person may not like when an average person might not like when they first wake up in the morning and just want to hear about the types of coffee that you should or shouldn't drink. You know what I mean? So it could be almost detrimental to have a PhD these days. You definitely don't need it to write.
true. I think the very notion of expertise is just it has so many implications for better or for worse. Like some people aren't trusting the experts that they should and putting too much weight into the experts that they shouldn't. Listen, it's weird. It's so strange. I
did said on the outset that it's a tricky world to navigate for sure.
So I guess to sort of transition into the more like not practical, but like the day to day of
the how-to, the what do we do now?
Yes, exactly. How much time per week, or however parameters you want to put around it, do you set aside for working on articles? Like the grind. What's that?
Yeah. Me personally, I write articles strictly during the weekend unless I am on a deadline for a feature that I was asked to write. So usually at least one day when I only think about the story that I need to write for a certain publication. Because so many things go into writing an article. It's not just about sitting down and starting to write, especially if you are writing about a certain area of expertise that you have, whether it be student life, pop culture, whatever, unless you're writing a puff piece. And even into puff pieces, a certain amount of work, you have to put a certain amount of work into puff pieces because you are writing a complimentary article about someone. So you need to know about their work and what they are, who they are, what they do. So the first half of the day is just research, library, internet, talking to people of similar mind, of similar backgrounds. So that's like half my day. And then the other half is actually writing it. Sometimes I get it done in one day. Sometimes, at least the first draft, I mean, sometimes it's just I can't write. Sometimes I just do research in one day and then I have to take a break and start writing another day. But I definitely do that only on the weekends. Because during the week, I find it distracting and I don't like to half-ass anything. So
I mean, what's interesting, okay, there are two questions that come to mind, but here's the first one. So you just used the phrase like puff piece. It took me a second to realize of what you were talking about. So like I guess for people who are getting acclimated to the journalism space, like in the resources that you pointed to earlier, like would those resources, or do you have any resources or can think of any that people would understand like the lingo of like article contribution, or do you think the knowledge of that lingo isn't entirely necessary for people just starting out?
It really depends. Like I said, I'm kind of a unique case to talk to because I had a lot of mentoring. So I would say my advice would be go get yourself a mentor, someone who is willing to invest in you and teach you about these things. But as far as the language of the journalism goes, there is definitely a dictionary for that you can use, journalism dictionary, where you can learn about op-eds, opinions of an editor that you used to write, Kyra, or puff pieces. Those are mostly reserved to tabloid magazines. I mean, it used to now, but again, it's a larger topic of the media getting politicized, and um, you see journalists always praising one side of the story instead of being completely objective. So it is what it is.
I feel
But
like it's a learn as you go. Like you can look up the words as you confront them.
For sure, mostly. And also, communication is very important. You do not need to learn everything before you start pitching. You just need to learn about the person that you are pitching to, because you are not really you're not pitching to a publication. You're pitching to a person. So you need to learn everything about their work. You need to learn what they like, and what kind of topics they're interested in.
I have a
So
question about the pitch aspect.
yeah, go ahead.
As a person who's been on the receiving end of it too, being a journalist,
Hmm.
is follow up as important in this aspect as well? Because I know you've mentioned before, maybe in a previous one of our chats, these reporters get hundreds of emails a day, and they might not ever see your message. They might not respond to you. Is follow up essential if you haven't heard from them in X amount of time?
Yeah, that's the most important aspects of pitching for sure. Publicists have a very meticulous schedule about follow up. It's not really. Here's the thing, right? The golden rule is to wait 3 days, right? 72 hours. That really doesn't apply when you are pitching to editors. They live just very different lives. So follow up after 7 days for the first time. Then for the second time, wait another week. So that would be the second follow up would be 2 weeks from the first one. No, 1 week from the first one. I'm sorry. And then wait, I would say 3 to 4 days and pitch again, follow up again. So I would say at least 3 follow ups.
Does the 24-hour news cycle have a big impact on that time frame, though?
It does, but the truth is, I don't really have experience with pitching to a news cycle like CNN or CBS or stuff
So
like
we're
that.
talking big picture, contributing writing, not necessarily
Exactly.
current event hot button.
Exactly, because here's the thing: if there is a story that's like breaking news, they already have people in their arsenal internally that they're going to reach out to. They have their sort of like, how the police has their city informants that they go to. So journalists, same thing. If there is a thing happening, they know about it because they have their informants. So I would say you're wasting your time when it comes to media news cycle. But again, not a lot of experience with CNN or stuff like that. So I can only speak about magazines, literary journals, that sort of thing.
Two-headed question. The first part of it being a direct response to what you just said. So would you ultimately recommend that people just breaking into journalism focus on evergreen content, just in terms of accessibility?
It depends really where your heart lies. It depends on what kind of journalism you are doing. If you're an investigative journalist, like my idol Jay Bahadur was, or actually still is, then yes, focus on that. But then again, there's a caveat to that as well, because stories, the producers who are interested in stories, they plan out content months and months ahead. So I would say there is a little bit of time. When it comes to, as I said, to breaking news cycle, they have their own resources. When you have a story that you want to pitch to TV or to, let's say, a publication that deals with the sort of breaking news thing, they plan out content months ahead. So no rush, really. Think through the pitch. Then you contact an editor or you contact a journalist, and if they're interested, they will probably tell you this can get published 2 months from now or 2 or 3 months from now, because they do plan ahead. So yeah.
So the next part of my question, and interestingly, we've all kind of addressed it because all of us have some experience with journalism. But
Yeah.
as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, I was involved in the opinion section specifically, and just for the sake of our audience, in journalism, the news opinion divide is like
Yeah.
a big ethical conundrum. So I guess my question, kind of circling back to what you were saying about the submission process, is if you're encountering like a publication, you have to know in advance who you're going to talk to, right? Because you can't talk to both sides at once.
Correct. Yes. Here's the thing: if you become a contributing writer, which is also a very general term, because you can become a contributing writer by guest posting, and magazines tend to green light a guest poster who they worked with previously. So it's never like a sure thing, but they tend to turn to their verified sources, I would say. But then again, you have to look at the climate of the publication that you are pitching to. Unfortunately, media has become politicized, not just in America, but just in general. It really depends on whose side the certain publication is. They are rarely objective, and I would say that's why it's so important to develop almost like a working friendship with an editor, because if they have a deciding power, or if they run a certain section, they can give you privileges. It's happened to me before that I wanted to write about a topic that the publication would normally get a lot of hell for, but they went with it because it was a personal favor. And then again, I've encountered publications that refused my pitches because I was either not the right person to talk about the topic, and people who read magazine, or just people in general, are a little bit superficial. Myself included. We all are. We all judge a book by its cover initially. So, like, to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I would very much like to write about racism and my experience with it. But because I'm a white woman, a certain publication thought that it was not my place to talk about it, when in fact my father is Black. But people don't know that. So on the outset, they see the name, they see my picture, and they'll be like, oh, white woman talking about racism, not really, you know what I mean? So it really depends, unfortunately.
Yeah.
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 I was being brutally honest, honestly.
Well,
If it helps anybody, great. If not, at least it's out there. So
it's definitely really helpful to know, like, from a standpoint, like people have kinds of, particularly within any form of content circulating, and some of the reasons why they'll say no to you, low-key don't miss. But I actually have a question. So far we've been talking about the pitching process and the generating of the articles, but once the article is done and posted, you want people to read it, So, what are some of the best ways to promote articles once they go live?
right. I would say, that's such a good question. Avoid Instagram. Um, not because I have, nothing personal against Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well. I just don't spend a lot of time with it, and I don't hone my skills on Instagram. It's just not worth it. But you can get, and here's the thing, you can get triple views on LinkedIn on the same post as opposed to Instagram. And, it's just, I got acquainted with some of the best journalists and writers on LinkedIn. Liz Leba, the host of Ebony Media podcast, New York Times featured writer. I learned from Jess Novak, a senior editor at Greatest magazine about pitching. I learned from Farnoosh Torabi, Oprah's finance columnist, who's essentially a young woman, but particularly old school when it comes to journalism and swears on word of mouth and building a personal relationship with editors. So LinkedIn is such a better platform for this sort of thing. And particularly if you tag the right people, if you message them with a certain post that you have already posted on LinkedIn. So I would say when it comes to social media, LinkedIn. Some people will tell you Twitter as well. Again, I can't speak to that because I'm not on Twitter at all. But avoid Instagram because it's just not worth it. That this type of content does not do well on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that Instagram isn't the best for particularly journalistic pieces. Apparently, I still wholeheartedly agree with you, but apparently, can you guys still hear me? Very cool. So, apparently though, they have this new feature on your Instagram story where you can put a link through and somebody can access an article that way. But yeah, it's still probably not very reliable.
That used to be something that only people with more than 10,000 followers could do.
I know, I remember, right? And then Instagram started losing to LinkedIn severely because LinkedIn has started growing intensely. And when you look at their numbers annually, each year, I think they have 50% more users than the previous year, which is not the case for Instagram. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, beautiful people, there are two official questions left. I mean, I'm sure we might have a couple of follow-ups, but with this second to last question, um, and all the beautiful people who are watching us, ask a question in the chat if you have any. Zara is awesome; she can answer them, etc.
Yep.
But so here's our second to last question: do you think becoming contributing writers publications can make people stronger authors when it comes to their long form work?
No, no. Not necessarily, no, because it's a different type of medium, right? And it will one will not make you learn about the other unless you are writing a book that explicitly aligns with the type of writing you contribute with to certain publications. Writing for a publication, any publication really, whether it be a tabloid magazine or a literary journal, comes with a huge amount of theatricality and dramatics and manipulation of the text to suit the current um, environment on the internet. So, you know, for you to get the kind of visibility that you yourself and your work that you want would get. So let's say if I wanted to submit to a history magazine, unless I've done research that explicitly shows that they either have done an article like that before, or just simply are not interested in that kind of content, it would be a good idea to pitch them about the history of rock and roll in America right now, because then you can drop Elvis Presley's name, and which that will get you into the Google news cycle, since there is a huge production of Baz Luhrmann's Elvis currently premiering at Cannes. So Google algorithm likes to promote articles that they know will get them a lot of clicks based on current world events. Anyway, long story short, just because a certain medium falls under the same umbrella of writing, that does not mean the same writing techniques apply to all media under that umbrella. So, no.
That's a great final question. I was honestly not expecting that answer, because like in my head, I'm like, any chance you have to write makes you a better writer, right? But no, I appreciate your nuanced answer.
Yes.
You're welcome.
I actually have a quick follow-up before our final question.
Yes.
Can't resist. You mentioned it earlier. Rejection. Rejection is not fun at any point in life, like ever. Yes. Who's like, yay, I got rejected. But within the context of being a contributing writer, and because a lot of the people in our audience are authors, they might have experienced rejection for longer form works, but not so much with like more short form pieces. So how do you recommend authors respond if, say, they experience rejection of a pitch? You alluded to your own experience earlier, but like, is there something you do to like push forward, recover, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, get over it. It's just listen. When you want to be a writer, when you want to be a writer, journalist, whatever type of writer, it just comes with the job that you have to have a thicker skin than usual people, than any people that you would ever meet on the street. You will probably, in that group of friends, will be the person with the thicker skin than anyone else there. So I don't know, man. If they close the door, then break down their windows, or go through a gas pipeline to get into their home. It's just because here's the thing, and this is speaking from a personal experience. Sometimes they tell you no. No, actually, scratch that. Always, when they tell you no, it's always about the pitch and the topic, not about you. Because I pitched a certain topic to the Historical Magazine of London, and they were like, they replied with, we have hundreds of articles written about this topic. So my bad, I haven't done my research properly. So then I was like, okay, is there anything else that you would like me to write about, since I have this and this type of knowledge about this and this type of thing? And they were like, yes. So I would say get over it. It's not personal, and it's not just writers, when you get rejected, you always think that it's personal, because when you are growing up, it usually is, because you get a lot of no's from your parents, or you get a lot of no's from your boyfriends or your girlfriends. So when it comes to when you come of age and you enter a professional workforce, you have a history of precedents that when people tell you no, it's personal. But that's not how it works in a professional world. Those people don't know you. They could give a damn about you. So when they say no, it's because it doesn't suit their whatever they are focusing on, either their brand, or they've done this type of thing before. If you write a pitch, when you establish yourself as an expert, or if you have a portfolio of writing pieces or writing for certain publications before them, whatever is relevant to that type of pitch, if they say no, it's about the pitch. So it's only personal to the extent that you haven't done your research, you haven't done your homework. So just get over it. It's not personal.
I think this is a great segue into our final question. Like this all in this vein is kind of like, any final words of wisdom to authors who have intentionally come into the space and are wondering, how do I become a contributing writer?
No, I'm good.
You're good. You've said everything you feel like you need to say.
It's been 40 minutes of giving my wisdom. So
I agree.
You know what I mean? So, any final words of wisdom? The only thing that I can say would be considered cliche, something like, and something that I've already said before, like don't give up, get over it. So I'm good.
I'm gonna put that on a pillow. Don't give up, get over it.
Truly.
Thank you so much for your time today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this 40 minutes
Thank
with
you for having me.
Woo! Thank you so much, Zara. All right, beautiful people. That was fun. First of all, Zara is always super fun to talk to. I really appreciate her candor. It's rough out here. It's rough out here being a writer. It's rough out here contributing stuff, but we're all here for each other and we can do it. We can do it. We just can't take roadblocks personally, right? It's all growing opportunities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That.
Exactly. So our next coffee chat will actually be with a publicity expert, and she's going to talk to us more explicitly about how to navigate the publicity space from the perspective of a publicity expert. So we had a previous conversation last time from an author, from Jenny, and now we're hearing from a publicity expert. I've said that a bunch of times in the past minute. It's okay.
Did we mention it's with a publicity expert?
Did we mention it? Anyway.
I'm very excited.
So excited. So if you guys enjoy this space, we love having you here. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Suggest a topic. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about, who you want to be on this coffee chat. If you want to be on the coffee chat, don't hesitate to drop a question, comment, concern, confession in the comments below. You know, we actually check those. We reply to those. It's not just going out to the void. And without further ado, may you have a wonderful rest of your evenings, mornings, wherever you are in the world.